Advanced movement shooter games are by far my favorite subgenre of FPS games, which, while controversial, I stand by as I love going fast, hopping from wall to wall while killing enemies. And robots were a huge part of the media I loved growing up, and even the media I consume today. Yet somehow, the most loved movement shooter game with large mechs eluded me during my childhood.
What's up, gamers? Titanfall 2 is a game that younger me would have loved, and yet somehow I have never fully played it. So I wanted to take a look back and see just what I was missing out on.
Now, before we jump right into Titanfall 2, we have to start with the original. Titanfall 1 came about from Infinity Ward devs, aka Call of Duty developers, when they formed Respawn Entertainment, with Titanfall 1 being made with the core principles of player mobility, survivability, and the merging of cinematic design with fast-paced action. The developers wanted to lessen the restrictions on mobility that the more tactical shooters had developed, and instead took influence from the speed that games like Quake and Half-Life offered, with the game even being made on a modified version of the Source engine. This would then lead to the wall running being developed, which, while not crazy now, virtually no mainstream shooter games had the feature at the time. And with the success of Titanfall 1, it would lead to the birth of the movement shooter genre as we know it today, and the splitting off from the arena shooter genre to become more of its own thing. While of course TF1 wasn't the only game to implement advanced movement, COD itself had already been pointing at shifting over to more futuristic gameplay before getting its own set of advanced movement games after Titanfall's release. Titanfall was the game to truly kick the industry towards that direction. As for the gameplay, it's great with how fluid the movement and gunplay are. The Titans feel extremely powerful, yet they never seemed overpowered when playing as just a pilot. The game only features multiplayer modes even with its campaign missions, though thankfully the game is still pretty alive on Xbox servers. Even as a new player, I was able to have a lot of fun, but for as much fun as it was, the game just feels like a prototype. Maybe it was the lack of a slide mechanic, but the whole time I was playing, it just felt like the testing ground for if the concept of Titanfall could work and be successful. Turns out it was! So just 2 years after its release, Titanfall 2 came out on October 28th, 2016. This time for PS4 as well, and not just the Xbox. TF2 redefined every single amazing element of TF1, making it into a masterpiece. The issue is that barely anyone got to experience this redefined masterpiece. See, EA basically killed the game's chances of success by placing it in between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. And I'm not even saying a few months in between, I'm saying a literal week after Battlefield 1 came out, Titanfall 2 released. At least with Call of Duty, they couldn't control that one. EA owns Battlefield. They purposely screwed over their own game. So Titanfall 2 ended up underperforming, which is a real shame, but anyways, enough rambling about how it came about, let's get into the meat of Titanfall 2, starting with the campaign. You play as Jack Cooper, rifleman turned pilot, as he, and subsequently you, go from someone barely surviving encounters to someone who turns the tide of a fight. The learning curve is excellent, because while the game has a tutorial level being the gauntlet, for as much stuff it teaches you about the movement and gunplay, it leaves for you to naturally figure out while playing. You can sense yourself getting better and more accustomed to the ways in which everything works. The guns work with the movement and then vice versa to make this beautiful dance and flow for the gameplay. The devs essentially give you incredibly fun tools and use the levels as a backdrop for you to learn and experiment with them. Then there's the whole other side of the game being the Titans. The entire first level sees you working to repair BT, aka the best character.
This type weapon is an advanced design and may give us a tactical advantage.
I think somebody's in love.
A human's concept of love requires admiration, attraction, devotion, and respect. Conclusion: I am 50% in love.
Hell yeah. I'm on a hot streak.
Your vitals do not indicate a temperature problem. You wish for me to investigate this hot streak sensation further.
It's just an expression, BT. It means I've been killing a lot of enemies quickly.
Understood. I have added hot streak to my vocabulary. I have had numerous hot streaks within the past 38 standard hours.
Anyways, when you finally get to play with the Titan, it serves as such a rewarding moment, as the game makes it a point just to show you how powerful you are with it. The Titan gameplay, even on the hardest difficulty, makes you feel like a juggernaut. But of course, the game combats this by having you face enemy Titans. And the way in which the gameplay differs from Pilot to Titan is shocking when you consider just how well both work. As while playing as a Pilot, you try to use the environment to your advantage, of course using cover, but also managing your opportunities for advanced movement. While with the Titan, it revolves around the managing of your abilities as you switch between Titan classes mid-fight to better handle the situation. I do wish a few of the Titan classes were more developed, as some copy and paste abilities, but thankfully there's only a few that do this, and the abilities they do copy are the stronger ones when it comes to being fun. Nonetheless, the game makes sure to slowly reward you with more and more Titan classes, usually after boss fights, helping you feel more powerful as the story progresses, yet it never overdoes it. There's a great split throughout the levels for when you're able to use your Titan and when you can't, making the moments you can feel more special, especially as they often come after the more difficult fights. Going back for a second, I mentioned boss fights, which if you've never played the game before might sound a little strange. I mean, how do you even do a boss fight in an FPS game? People don't typically survive after getting shot once, let alone multiple times.
I've had worse.
All the bosses in Titanfall 2 are different members of the Apex Predators, with there being 5 of them to fight, each sporting their own Titan class to make things interesting. The bosses, because of this, have you adapt to different playstyles to best deal with their abilities. These weren't a walk in the park, as you definitely need to shift the way you play, but after 1 or 2 deaths, they click and you learn the way they attack. The main purpose the bosses serve are wrap-up points for level themes, an example being Ash taunting you while you make your way through a facility seemingly making fake houses, and when you think you're finally going to fight them, they just test you with grunt enemies. It's not until the place is falling apart that you get the chance to fight them, and instead of using a sniper as you may think since she's done nothing but taunt you from afar, she instead wields a sword and gets up close and personal, making for an incredible juxtaposition for player expectations. And on this point, I want to talk about just how cinematic the game feels, which while that might sound like a buzzword I'm just throwing around, for 6.5 hours, the game constantly surprised me with just how excited it made me to play. Now, this is getting into real spoiler territory, so here's a warning if you weren't expecting the guy talking about Titanfall to actually talk about Titanfall, but one of my favorite moments in a video game happens after you're captured and BT is destroyed. At what should be the lowest point for Jack and the player, it becomes the highest point as within the kit given, you get the auto-aim pistol. This makes enemies die from a single click of a button. It's such an insane feeling being able to just run through the compound, obliterating every force in your path. And again, this serves as such a great shift in expectations for the player, when arguably you should be weak and limping around. Another moment I loved was the fight with Viper, as it makes you think you've won before subverting your expectations and beginning the fight again when you had hopped out of your Titan. And BT, who up until this point seemed unstoppable, actually gets hurt. The game constantly builds up to these amazing moments. I mean, the assault on the base and when BT comes back using the iconic line of "Stand by for Titanfall" was in all meanings of the word cinematic, especially when BT gets a new chassis, as then you get the strongest Titan class out of them all, literally giving you a minigun to mow down enemies with. Or we can talk about all the little moments that the game spends building Jax and your relationship with BT, making it all the more emotional when BT sacrifices himself for you, as he slowly repeats the main protocols of the mission, connecting you back to your first moments with him. This is just scratching the surface, as all throughout the gameplay, it leaves you wanting more. I've talked about before how certain games can give you a feeling of dread while playing them, a sense where it just makes you want to put the game down and never touch it again. Titanfall 2 represents the perfect opposite of this for me, as every single time I set the game down to go do something else, I could not stop thinking about how much I wanted to play it again, because as I keep repeating, the gameplay excels, with its ability to never linger too long on a certain concept, being one of its greatest qualities. Whether it be you teaming up with other pilots or platforming with an arc tool, the game cuts things off early to ensure you're left wanting more, encouraging you to replay the game many times over. And I mean, for anyone who's played the game before, you had to see this coming. The time travel mechanic is one of the coolest ideas ever. Now, taking a step back for a moment, I remember specifically when I was younger going to a friend's house and playing through this section of the campaign, and just being enthralled with how satisfying it was. Since then, the game stuck in my mind, yet I had no idea what game it was that I had played, until now. And playing with time travel is still beyond satisfying, as you use it in both platforming and gunfights to switch between past and present. You manage what's going on to survive. Specifically during fights, switching from fighting prowlers in the present and armed guards in the past, all while keeping track of where each one is when you switch, is so enjoyable. And the game knows this by making sure you get overwhelmed by the amount of enemies in both sets of time to encourage you to constantly switch back and forth. I could seriously play an entire game centered around the mechanic, as it adds a new depth to combat that I had never even imagined. Now, I want to move away from the campaign in order to talk about the multiplayer. If Titanfall 1 is the prototype to the movement in TF2's campaign, then the multiplayer had lapped it in design 3 times over. The simple addition of a grappling hook opens up movement so much, and that's just one ability. The amount of customization you have can make it so the game can be played in wildly different ways without there being a meta that restricts you due to non-optimal playstyles not feeling fun. Instead, the game encourages experimentation and combining different abilities and weapons. This is all while the maps feel actually designed to open up movement. My biggest issue with other movement shooters of that time was that they didn't truly capitalize on their movement. Titanfall 2, on the other hand, makes movement the core focus around the level design. The campaign and multiplayer maps feel as though every inch was designed with the thought of someone bouncing around, and this just makes gameplay so much more addicting. The multiplayer is a huge factor for why people return to the game, despite how replayable the campaign is, with it even offering hidden collectibles to search for. It is a story mode at the end of the day, so a lot of people will only ever play it once or twice, and the more hardcore fans will maybe play it once a year tops. That doesn't make it bad by any means. My point is that the multiplayer has helped to keep the game alive for so long, as it's truly amazing. Like I said, it takes every single concept present in both Titanfall 1 and 2's campaign and pushes them to the max in order for it to feel chaotic yet enjoyable. The progression also feels extremely gratifying, as every single match I played, I kept unlocking things, yet the balance never felt out of whack when playing against people who had played the game since launch. The reason why I bring up people returning to the game constantly for the multiplayer is that up until a little over a year ago, the game was plagued by DDoS attacks, making it so the game was unplayable. The multiplayer, at least anyways. It was so bad that Titanfall 1 ended up being taken off of Steam and other stores, as instead of EA fixing the issue presented with the hackers, they took the easy route. Typical, huh? This ended up being blown up in their face though, as Apex Legends, which we'll get into later, was then hacked by people trying to save Titanfall, promoting the website savetitanfall.com. This led to many people using a mod titled Northstar in order to avoid the attacks. This finally ended around September of 2023, when Respawn's team of only 2 people dedicated to Titanfall put an end to the DDoS attacks, making servers playable again. Now, I had mentioned Apex Legends. You would assume that a game that I've just spent a good few minutes non-stop praising would get a sequel, yet Titanfall 3 has still never had an official announcement. Blame it on the fact that Titanfall 2 quote-unquote underperformed, or the fact that EA doesn't understand what people actually want, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that it's a shame we don't have a continuation of the story and concepts presented. Instead, EA greenlit Apex Legends, a spin-off based on the Apex Predators group and the subsequent Apex games. And Apex, if you don't know, is a battle royale game made following the footsteps of Fortnite, while combining elements of hero shooters such as Overwatch. And over the past 6 years, it's formed its own identity as a titan, no pun intended, within the genre. It features a a few characters that were either in Titanfall 2 or were related to its events, alongside new characters with a variety of fun abilities. The game, truthfully, is fun. My main issue with it being that EA has a new cash cow, and as long as that game is still able to pump out recolors and overpriced heirlooms, Titanfall 3 has less of a chance to be made. As why would EA take resources from an already successful product, all while risking splitting the player base between the two games? It doesn't matter how well received Titanfall 2 was and even how much Titanfall 3 would sell, EA won't see the point in doing the work when they already have a popular game out. This hasn't stopped numerous rumors and fake leaks around a potential Titanfall 3, yet, like I said, nothing official has been announced. Aside from the cancelled Titanfall Legends. I talked about the game when I discussed development hell within gaming, but to give a brief summary, it was a project set to combine the characters and stories of both Titanfall and Apex, with not much being known past that, as the game was said to be cancelled in February of 2023, which is a real shame. I loved my time playing Titanfall 2, and to be honest, I'll probably play it again soon enough, as the game is great, and I found close to zero flaws with my experience of it. It truly sucks that there's so many reasons behind why a third game hasn't been released, as I truly think it has the potential to be one of the greatest games of all time. As if Titanfall 2 made shockwaves around the FPS genre, a sequel could change the way people think about gaming as a whole.
But who am I kidding? I can't wait to play Apex Legends and see them parade around Titanfall's corpse just so they can sell me a few extra skins. Who needs masterpieces anyways?